Ken looked like he was living a dream he never fully signed up for, and now that dream is quickly turning into a legal nightmare. On the surface, it looked like one of those typical messy reality TV relationships: man meets woman in the middle of a long divorce, thinks he's the knight in shining armor, only to realize he's just another chapter in a story that's been dragging on way too long. But when a judge stepped in with an order that basically said, marry her or move out, everything changed. Suddenly, this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about law, deadlines, and consequences. To really understand how wild this whole thing is, we have to rewind. Trisha and Marquez's divorce felt like it lasted forever. 3 entire seasons of back-and-forth drama, pettiness, and bitterness, with their young daughter caught in the middle of it all. Every episode seemed to drag out some new fight: money, custody, cheating accusations, you name it. By the time the ink finally dried on those divorce papers, fans thought, finally, they can both move on. But instead of closing one chapter, the divorce just opened another one, and somehow, this one is even messier. See, the court didn't just sign off on the divorce and call it a day. They added in some of the strictest post-divorce rules fans had ever seen. For starters, Trisha got primary custody of their daughter. That part made sense. She had always appeared to be the more stable parent, at least publicly. But then came the twist. Marquez was allowed visitation, but with heavy conditions. No overnight stays unless he had his own place with all utilities in his name, plus 3 clean drug tests in a row. That's not some random detail courts throw in just for fun. That kind of requirement only happens when there are serious concerns. Maybe his lifestyle, maybe rumors of drug use, maybe just the way he carried himself in court. Something raised a big enough red flag for a judge to put it in writing. So while Marquez was under pressure to prove he could be a responsible father, the court turned its attention to Trisha too. That's when things really took a sharp turn. Trisha was hit with a legal order that she could not live with any romantic partner unless she was married to them. No exceptions. No wiggle room. No, we're just trying it out. Either there was a ring and a license, or there was no living together. And that's where Ken enters the picture. As far as anyone could tell, Ken had been living with Trisha, or at least staying there nearly every night. The judge's order didn't leave room for interpretation. If Trisha and Ken weren't married by 5 p.m. on August 25, Ken had to leave. Not gradually, not when it felt convenient, but immediately. Out the door, gone, done. That's not just pressure, that's a ticking clock. A legal deadline with real consequences attached. When the news hit the internet, fans and critics alike lost their minds. Social media blew up with opinions. Some people warned Ken to run before it was too late, calling Trisha manipulative and emotionally unavailable. Others pointed fingers at Ken, labeling him unstable, accusing him of steroid use, and saying he was way too obsessed with a woman who didn't even seem to want him. There were even whispers about Ken's behavior around Marquez's kids. Fans noticed things that raised red flags and said they didn't feel comfortable with him being around Trisha's daughter. Suddenly, the debate wasn't just about Ken and Trisha's relationship. It became a conversation about safety, stability, and parenting. And through all this noise, one thing stood out crystal clear: most people didn't believe Trisha actually wanted to marry Ken in the first place. Her hesitation wasn't new. Every time someone asked her about marrying Ken, she had a reason ready. First, it was because the divorce wasn't final yet. Then, it was because she needed more time to focus on herself. Then, she said she wanted to focus on her daughter. There was always something. But now? The divorce is over, the judge has spoken, and the deadline has passed. So what's stopping her now? Fans started reading between the lines. If she really loved Ken, wouldn't she have jumped at the chance to secure her relationship, especially with a judge practically forcing her hand? But instead of racing down the aisle, Trisha looked like someone dragging her feet, weighing her options, and holding back. Ken isn't blind. He's noticed. On more than one occasion, he's confided in friends like Will, openly questioning whether this whole situation is worth it. When a man starts wondering aloud if he's being used, that's a sign the relationship is already on shaky ground. But here's the strange part. Even though Trisha acts hesitant, she hasn't told Ken to leave either. It's almost like she wants the benefits of having him around, help with the house, someone to act like a father figure when it's convenient without actually making the commitment of marriage. And that's exactly why so many people are side-eyeing this situation. Because if she doesn't want to marry him, why is he still there? Ken, for his part, seems trapped in a cycle. One day, he's ready to leave. The next, he's back making breakfast, acting like everything's fine. Maybe it's love. Maybe it's fear of starting over. Maybe he doesn't want to admit to himself that he chose the wrong woman. Whatever the reason, he's still in the picture, still fighting to prove he's worth marrying even though every sign points to the odds being stacked against him. And now that the court is involved, it's bigger than emotions. It's about consequences. Because here's the hard truth, if Ken and Trisha are still living together unmarried, they're violating a court order. And once that gets reported, and believe me, it will, this won't just affect Trisha's love life. It will directly impact her custody case. Judges do not play around when kids are involved. If Marquez wants to stir up trouble, all he has to do is claim Trisha is breaking the order. That could send them right back into court, and custody could be re-evaluated. One wrong move, and everything could change. Speaking of Marquez, let's talk about child support. Fans were floored when they heard the number, just $300 a month. That doesn't even cover a month's groceries, let alone clothes, school expenses, and the everyday needs of a growing child. So what's really going on? Is Marquez truly broke, or is he hiding money? Either way, the picture it paints isn't flattering. To most people, it looks like he's not pulling his weight. And that's where Ken's role gets even more complicated. If Marquez is only contributing $300, guess who ends up covering the rest? Yep, Ken. And that raises another uncomfortable question. If Trisha isn't sure about marrying Ken, why is she comfortable letting him step in financially like a husband? That's not just blurred lines. That's manipulation, plain and simple. And the internet has noticed. Comment after comment online calls out the same pattern. Trisha wants support without strings, while Ken is left carrying the emotional and financial burden. And little by little, those strings are tightening around his neck. The bigger picture here isn't just about love triangles and messy drama. It's about how unstable this situation really is. Because at the heart of it all, there's a child watching three adults fail to get their lives in order. One father who barely contributes, one boyfriend who looks like he's unraveling under the pressure, and one mother who can't seem to make up her mind. That's what makes this situation feel so much heavier than your average reality TV fight. This isn't just entertainment. This is a little girl's life, shaped by the chaos of adults who can't decide if they're partners, enemies, or something in between. Fans are exhausted. What once felt like juicy reality TV drama now feels like a slow-motion train wreck. The constant fighting, blaming, reconciling, and repeating, it's draining. And many viewers are openly saying the same thing: it's time for someone to make the hard choice. Either Trisha commits to Ken and gives this family some stability, or she admits he was never the one and lets him go for good. Ken has decisions to make too. Does he keep trying to fix a situation that was broken before he ever arrived? Or does he walk away with whatever pride he still has left? Because here's the reality: when courts start dictating your love life, there's no room for maybe. You either build something solid, or you risk losing everything. And right now, this house of cards looks like it's seconds away from collapsing. At the end of the day, this whole story feels less like a love tale and more like a warning. What started as romance turned into legal deadlines, financial battles, and endless questions about trust. Ken thought he was stepping into a dream, but now he's caught in a storm he never expected. Trisha, on the other hand, looks like a woman standing at a crossroads, one path leading toward stability with Ken, the other toward freedom but with consequences she can't ignore. And Marquez? He's playing the sidelines, contributing the bare minimum while his daughter grows up in the middle of chaos. The truth is, this isn't just about marriage papers or child support checks. It's about a little girl who deserves peace, love, and stability, not cameras capturing fights and judges setting ultimatums. one decision could change her life forever. So now the question hangs in the air: will Trisha and Ken make it official, or will this legal order become the thing that finally tears them apart? And if it does, what happens to the child who never asked for any of this? Because sometimes, reality TV isn't entertainment, it's real life with real consequences.